Hello, everybody. A warm welcome from the Butler Gallery. I'm Alan Kerwin, the Learning and Public Engagement Curator for the Gallery, and delighted to introduce today our topic and event, Bringing It All Together, which is titled. And for this, we will be joined by Grainne Rose Fordham, who is the layout artist on WolfWalkers, and Helga Bjarnadóttir, who is the supervisor for ink and painting on the film. And both Grainne and Helga will be in conversation with Ann Mulrooney, who is the studio manager of Cartoon Saloon, and Ann will be putting the questions to these two very talented and creative people. Before I jump in and to let the panel begin, I'd just like to say a few things. Just for all of you to know that Grainne actually is the artist in residence at Butler Gallery over the course and duration of the exhibition. And so we're delighted to have her with us. And of course, in the current situation, it's a digital residency really, which is working out fantastically well in all sorts of ways. But I just wanted to make you all aware that Grainne will be doing a series of animation workshops over the course of March and April. And we decided in discussing with Grainne that it would very much focus on young people and developing their skills around animation and the principles of animation. So if you have, or indeed are joining us as a secondary school student, you can log on to the Butler Gallery website, butlergallery.ie, and you can book a series of spaces there. We've made a lot of dates available, and you can have a very personalized workshop with Grainne over the next 2 months. Also younger ages, there's a lot of interest in the 10 to 14-year-old age range in animation. And again, Grainne will lead a series of workshops for this age range online. So I just really wanted to point that out for you. And finally, of course, if you haven't seen the artwork or the original artwork yet, you can log on to the gallery website where you can see a 360 tour that we've made available. And Cartoon Saloon have kindly teamed up with the gallery for an exhibition on that original artwork, and you can see it there. Do ask questions, pose questions in the Q&A section as the talk unfolds, and I will collate and come back at the end to put them to the panel. So I will hand over to Anne at this stage to begin the proceedings.
Great, thanks Alan, and thanks also to Animation Ireland and to Screen Skills Ireland for their support of this talk. I know that Grainne has been having intermittent internet issues today, so she may drop in and out a little, but we will work our way around it. Hi Grainne.
Yes. I'm back.
Good. Well, we'll just roll with
fingers crossed.
And I think also there's a very slight time lag between you and the rest of the call as well. So we'll just leave a bit of a space between questions and answers to cope with that, because you are in faraway Galway at the moment. So obviously that's a long way for the internet to travel.
Exactly.
Great to see you both. Nice to see you after many months of us all being separated in the studio. Because a lot of the audience joining us here today are people who are interested in maybe studying animation or moving into animation, I'd really like to start with both of you to ask you about your backgrounds and your training and how you came to be here at this point, having worked on WolfWalkers. So Helga, can we start with you? Can you tell us a little bit about your background and your career path?
Sure thing, yeah. So I was born and raised in Reykjavik, Iceland. And I initially was studying something more sensible, which was math and physics. But I realized when I was maybe 18 or so, I actually realized watching some behind the scenes featurettes that this was actually a job you could have, was to work in animation. So then I just decided to do that. There was kind of no other option in my mind. I'm still very sensible, so I finished what I was doing. And then I found at the time, and I think still, you can't study animation in Iceland, there isn't a course for it. So I decided to do a 1-year arts course in Iceland, like a portfolio course, and then start applying for art schools all over the world, and failed to get into any of them. So I got a job in a bookstore and tried again the next year and failed again. So kept working in the bookstore. And finally, and all this time I was doing evening courses and practicing on my own. And then finally, the third time was the charm, and I got accepted into the animation program at Ballyfermot College in Dublin. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm moving to Dublin. So I did, and I finished the course there. And then after that, I saw an ad for an internship in compositing at Cartoon Saloon on Puffin Rock. So I applied to that and I got that. And I've just kind of been in the studio since. Like once I finished the internship, they still needed someone to help. So they hired me on, and then I stayed on for season 2 of Puffin Rock. And then because at the end of season 2 of Puffin Rock, the compositing supervisor, Mark Mulrooney, was starting to do other things on Breadwinner. So he kind of asked me to step in and take on some of his tasks, some of which included technical checking of backgrounds. So I had a bit of experience in that. So they offered me the role of technical checker on the Breadwinner, which was kind of the first time we'd had anyone do that job on a production as like their whole job. So that was very interesting to kind of see where I could fit in. And then after that, I got offered I was a compositing supervisor on Pete the Cat, and then ink and paint supervisor on WolfWalkers. And I got that job mostly because I asked for it. I just said, I think this would be a cool job, and I think I have the skills necessary. Can I do this, please? And they said yes. So that's how I came to do it.
That's quite brilliant. I love your determination in continuing to apply and continuing to work in the bookshop, and also your bravery in wanting that badly that you would travel to another country at really, pretty young age by yourself to study.
I was 23 by then, so not too bad, but it was still pretty scary.
Yeah. And I'm wondering also, because you said that maths and physics were big strengths of yours, and that's what you'd anticipated you'd study. Have you found in the work that you're doing that maths and physics ever play a part?
Yes, in some ways, yes. Not necessarily directly actually doing arithmetic or something like that, but having a good understanding of physics kind of gives you a good understanding, because animation is all movement, and like how slow in and slow out and all that, that's just inertia, which is a concept in physics, and weight and all those things, and like how airflow affects hair and secondary action, those are all just physics affecting things. So having an understanding of physics definitely helps there. And as for math, it just kind of having a basics in maths means that I just had a more kind of a way of thinking about things, about solving problems, which is kind of, it's come to be my favorite thing about the job. Like any job that I've had, I like solving things and I like learning things. And it's kind of the more analytical way that I approach things, which is kind of why I gravitate more towards the more technical roles of supervising the more technical departments. And like even now on the current project that I'm on, I'm currently an ink and paint supervisor, but we changed programs, and I found that in the new program you can do a little bit of scripting, which I've never done before. But I was like, yeah, I might as well try to learn that. So I've been scripting small tools to help, and that math really comes in handy there. So yeah, it does help.
Yeah, really good. I also loved that you asked for the job that you wanted. But I think there's big learning there for lots of people, because that also takes a lot of courage and determination.
Yeah, I always say this to people, that like there's no harm in asking or applying, because most of the time the worst thing that's going to happen is that someone says no to you, and then you end up in the same place as you would have been in if you didn't ask. So there's kind of no harm. It can be a little bit stressful to do it, of course, but then when it's done, either you get a cool new job or a raise or a promotion, or you get nothing, but you still get the pride of having asked.
Absolutely, and it's not always easy. There's a lot of research about how females are actually not so good at standing up for those elements of themselves and asking for promotions and raises. So.
Yeah, I was also raised by a feminist, so I've been very aware of all that for my whole life. So I've been trying to push myself to do these things, both for myself and also kind of encouraging other people to do it.
Excellent. That's role model behavior there, Helga.
I try.
And we might then, Grainne, ask you the same question. How did you come to be at this point in space and time?
Okay, I'm going to do this in little sound bites, just to try and help my internet. But it's all good now, right?
Mostly.
Okay. So good. I started in IADT up in Dublin. And then on my third year, after my third year, I left and I joined Cartoon Saloon for internship, and never went back to college, and stayed with Cartoon Saloon on Song of the Sea and some other projects. And then after that, I'd heard about the animation workshop. So I went over to Denmark and made loads of friends and had a really great time over there. And then I went to New York for an internship in Titmouse. And then after that, I went to Toronto for 2.5 years. And then I came back for WolfWalkers. And then I was supposed to just stay for WolfWalkers, but then I just was so happy to be home and to be in Ireland. And when WolfWalkers started, the amazing thing was it had a lot of the people I had worked with like 6 years ago, but it also had my Danish friends who I'd met in the animation workshop. So that was just amazing to have that team together. And then the pandemic hit. And so I'm happily still here. And yeah, that's how I got here anyway.
Great, a lot of traveling in that background. Have you, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I've still got a bit of a traveling bug as well. I still plan to spread my wings and fly to some other country as well soon enough.
So how big a decision was it to not go back to college? Was that scary at the time?
Yeah, very, very, very much so. It was a real it was a real big decision for me to make, because I think all of our parents and everyone tells us to stay in college and get that degree, and if you don't have it, then you'll be in trouble or whatever. But after college, I wanted to be with Cartoon Saloon. So the way I thought about it was, I was already in my dream job. So to leave the dream job to go back just to get a degree and Song of the Sea would be done, it all came down to just like where I wanted to be. And I was at the place, like I was at my ideal place. So going back to college, I had already learned, like your fourth year is just making a graduation film. So yeah, it became an easy decision in the end.
It sounds as though a more flexible way of studying would have been useful if you'd been able to finish your degree through placement, for example.
Yes, exactly. And I also still regret as well not having a graduation film or having been part of a graduation film, because I think most people in animation, they do have that, regardless of what college they've attended. They've all got that graduation film under their belt, and yeah, I haven't got that, but yeah, it was, I don't regret it in the end. Not that I'm telling anyone to drop out of college, but it was just the fitting decision at the time.
Well, it doesn't seem to have held you back in any way.
Yeah.
Okay, just moving on then a little from that, we're going to talk about the departments that you both work in, which are kind of where the all of the various concept work has been done, things have been animated, and it's really when it starts hitting layout that it starts to get pulled into something that really resembles a film. And it's actually quite a cinematic process. So Grainne, could you explain to us what layout is, what it does?
So we're the first department to kind of start production on the film. So we get the animatic, which is the series of storyboards that and it's the film. But once the animatic is locked and the scenes have all been okayed and it's ready to start looking like to move on to animation and layout, we're the people who kind of set up the backgrounds, and we have a look at where the characters will be laid, where they'll move within the scene. So we are making the backgrounds like just behind me here, but we have to take into consideration where the characters are going to be moving within the scene. So there is a couple of elements at play where you're making the drawing the background, but you're also considering the department ahead of you, animation, and how they're going to move around the space. With WolfWalkers, I think the thing that stands out the most with layout is the composition. It's such a unique style of composition in WolfWalkers. Everything in the background, all background elements, are usually framed around the characters, and so it was fun to play with that when you're starting with layout. And you're thinking of characters. It's just frame the characters within the scene, you know. And so yeah, that's what layout is. It's everything that's happening behind the animation. That's my job, and the background team.
And I understand it's described as well like a cross between cinematography and scenography. So you're thinking about the background, but you're also thinking about where the light is coming from, as though you were setting up on a stage almost.
Yes, that's exactly how to think about it, is to be setting it up on a stage, how the characters would move around on a stage. Make sure that they're fitted in the frame properly, they're not too outside the frame, or you know, and just to also, you have to think about the mood of the scene as well. If it's playful or scary, or you know, like whatever the message you're trying to get across in the scene, that has to be taken into consideration on how it's framed and how it's composed as well. If that makes any sense, using those big words. They're not big words, but they're words more linked to animation. Composition is just basically the layout of the frame.
And within that, then, are you thinking about like the narrative, how the framing might actually help the story move along?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like there's some scene. Sorry.
No, I was just wondering, what kind of decisions might you make in that?
Well, there's some scenes that I can think of in WolfWalkers, even like when when her father is getting mad at her, she becomes very small in the scene. She kind of will be pushed into a corner, and he'll be more towering over her, and that is to try and make her feel smaller and to make it be more scary. So we would then be composing the scene as well, that just to make her feel even more small. And even when he's angry, maybe using sharper shapes, or just making him feel more as dominant as he possibly can in the frame, and making her feel as small as possible. That's the kind of decisions that you're just trying to make to just strengthen the feel of the scene, rather than just relying on, you know, everyone's going to know that he's angry and that she's scared. But if you can actually use the frame to highlight that even further, and you know, then the colors are another way of trying to get across that message as well.
So do you need to have a really good grasp of the storyline in that case? You need to understand what the directors are aiming for, where the story's going.
Mm-hmm. I would say so, yeah. You definitely have to have a feel for the scene, but I think, you know, it's pretty obvious in those kind of scenes what the message is, because I mean, especially for those, I mean, it's just you know, our supervisor was very helpful with that as well, giving us notes to prepare us for that too. But I think as well with just watching the animatic and we all got a feel for the story, you know, and especially scenes when they're shouting at each other, you know, there's no questioning what the message is behind those scenes.
Cool. And Helga, can I ask you to describe to us what ink and paint is? Because it's a very hands-on sounding phrase. I'm picturing quills and glass bottles.
Not anymore. It started like that. Well, not quills, brushes. But it is coloring all the animation. So it's basically everything that moves on screen that is hand drawn, that needs to be colored by someone, and that's the ink and paint department. And ink and paint used to refer to actually both cleanup and color, but now the cleanup department is its own thing. So ink refers more to coloring the lines that need to be colored, and then paint is the fill. So that's ink and paint. So it was a little bit different on WolfWalkers because we also did offsets for the ink and paint on the characters. So to match with the kind of woodblock print style of the layouts in the town, and to match with the watercolory kind of, you know, colors drifting out of the lines in the forest, we did the same in the ink and paint, which, as far as I know, hasn't been done before, or at least I didn't find it when I was preparing for it.
What is an offset?
So that is when you're doing, it's to imitate the style of when you're doing like lino prints or woodblock prints. And if the lines are on one block and the color is on another, and they're supposed to fit together, but they get a little bit offset, so the color bleeds out of the lines a bit. And this was done in all the backgrounds in the town. So we wanted to do that with the characters as well, to make them kind of fit in even more. And it was quite a challenge because it's in the backgrounds it's still, but in the animation it moves, so it has to move with the characters. And like if the offset is on this side and then the character rotates in space, what happens to the offset? So we had to kind of figure all that out as we went.
And can I ask where these two departments meet? So is it after layout it is flowing into ink and paint, or is there anything in between?
No, so animation pipeline is kind of splits a little bit after layout, because the layout drawings then go both to the scene prep department, which prepares all of the animation files that will then have the character animation added on top of it. And then it also goes to the background department, and they add color to the layouts and paint them up. So it's quite, ink and paint and layout are actually in some ways quite far apart in the pipeline. Also because ink and paint is kind of at the end after scene prep, posing, animation, cleanup, and then ink and paint. But in other ways, especially on WolfWalkers, we were quite close because we were taking creative cues from the layouts to which direction to push the offsets, how much to push them and things like that. So in that way, it was kind of close as well, which is, I think, quite unique for this project.
So that's not the normal way then, Grainne. The two departments wouldn't be in such close contact and under normal circumstances in the pipeline?
No, I don't think so, really. But that's like the unique, how, you know, WolfWalkers is unique for many reasons, I think. And like Helga was just saying there, the fact that you were doing offsets with ink and paint. There's so many parts of WolfWalkers that I think were unique like that, that these two departments would be linked together. it's just another unusual aspect, unique aspect of WolfWalkers. But that was exactly it. Helga had to match those colors and those the style to the layouts that we were creating.
Okay, and I know that as well as your work on WolfWalkers, you are also the artist in residence in the Butler Gallery for the WolfWalkers exhibition. I'd love to know a little bit about how that experience has been. I know it's very different to how it was originally planned with pandemic, etc. So can you tell us a bit about the artist in residence role?
Yeah, I'm really happy to have been approached by it, and it's something I've never done before, but I'm really liking being involved in this new kind of challenge. Like myself and Alan we've had several meetings, but more recently we've just had to go online and go and do calls like this. And so originally we were going to do workshops, you know, in the Butler Gallery with 15 kids, and we were going to do they were character related workshops, making the wolves in clay, just to describe how you need to think of characters in 3D. Of course, the restrictions can't be in the gallery anymore. So we had a meeting on how could we possibly continue doing the workshops, but online. And Alan was actually the one who had the idea for doing it for the leave inserts. And I thought that was such a great idea, because I know there's a lot of anxiety right now with the leave inserts. You know, doing your leave insert during a pandemic, I mean, it just sounds like a nightmare. I know we're all like in a bad way, but I do really feel bad for the poor leave inserts. And so the leave insert workshop is kind of to discuss their art project as well as their portfolios if they're applying for college next year and it's animation related. Like if the students are hoping to get into an animation college, I'm hoping to be able to provide them with some guidance and also giving them a quick intro to animation, the foundations of animation, and yeah, and just looking through their answering any questions they might have. And yeah, so, and then the younger one is 10 to 14, and that's an intro to animation, but it's like how to bring your character to life. So hopefully the 10 to 14-year-olds will come in with a character they have, and I will rip it apart and be like, no, or yes, or, you know, make this more animation friendly. So it'll basically, I'll be giving them tips on how to make their characters more animation friendly, not loads of hair everywhere, or, you know, hundreds of spikes and things like that. And then show them animation principles, how they would begin thinking about animating that character. And so they're the two ones that we came up with, myself and Alan. And as far as I know, I think they're all almost sold out, which is both daunting and exciting.
Well,
So,
they sound fantastic, and a really good introduction for people. I'm very interested to know, because my background is in working in art galleries and public engagement. Has it made you think differently about animation, or is there a new perspective that you think about, having had this experience of having to think about the public in a new way as artist in residence?
yeah, I mean, it's starting to get to make me, you know, think about how I can maybe do this side of my residency, you know, and also I haven't realized how much I actually do want to share some of my knowledge. Not that I know a lot, but oops, I think, is my connection gone?
We can still hear you, but you froze a little.
Is it back?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. But yeah, I guess I didn't realize that I actually do have a will to teach people, like, especially when we were coming up with the character related stuff. I was like, from hanging out with my friends, especially my friend Sandra, who she works in posing and she's an animator. She's she has taught me a lot about making sure characters are animation friendly. You know, and so I'm looking forward to kind of passing on that knowledge that I've learned. And also there's walking tours. I forgot to mention that in April, there'll be some walking tours. It'll be walking around with a historian discussing the history of Kilkenny under Cromwell, and also just it's a sketching tour, sketching the different places that are featured in the WolfWalkers movie. So there's that too.
Brilliant, and that's very fitting, because in the research for the movie, the research teams did actually go out and sketch the architecture in Kilkenny, because lots of it is still quite medieval. So there are lots of little details in the film that are very true to life and based on Kilkenny. I'm just wondering. Oh, sorry, Grainne. Go ahead.
No, that was it.
Okay. I'm just wondering with both of you, and neither of you had what might be described a straightforward path. So Grainne's, yours might have started out straightforward, but you veered it off in quite a dramatic direction, which is a very brave move. And Helga, yours did not start in a straightforward way, and you kind of insisted that it went where you wanted it to. I'm just wondering for both of you, if you could maybe think and tell us a little bit about maybe some of the challenges and highlights for you, particularly with WolfWalkers, but also based on that, what kind of advice you would give people thinking of going into animation. And they can be any age, by the way. People can change career at any point. So not just school leavers, but you know, for anybody thinking about this. So we might start with you, Helga.
Sure, yeah. I guess there's always in terms of WolfWalkers, there were some definite challenges in that both I had never actually worked as an ink and paint artist. So I had to kind of study up on what that involves exactly. And we did not have an ink and paint department in-house at the time. So I kind of just had to build it, not by myself, obviously. But I kind of, so I kind of had a lot of blank slates with a lot of this, and I kind of had to figure it out, which was very challenging to do, but also very fun. Like I enjoy doing that kind of work. So that's also a highlight in a way, that the challenge is the reward for some of these things. And it was the same with the offsets, as I said before. No one, as far as I know, no one's really done that before. So I had to kind of work out, how do we do this? How do we make it move? What tools do we use? So I was lucky enough to have some time at the start of the project where it was just me and a computer and just trying things and throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And thankfully, I came up with some solutions, luckily. So that was good. But yeah, in terms of advice I would give people is, like, it all sounds really cliche, but like, if this is something you really want to do, you shouldn't give up on it. And it's okay if you work in a bookstore for 2 years. Like, I still consider that a very valuable part of my life, even if it, like, while I was there, I was kind of like, okay, this isn't what I want to be doing, but I'm going to try to enjoy it anyway. And actually, I had a really lovely time when I was working there, and it taught me a lot of things, like communicating with people. Like any customer service job, you learn how to communicate in specific ways, especially with people who are upset with you, because that happens when you work in retail. And that's all very valuable. And I also learned how to kind of take responsibility, because I was responsible for like the magazine section, like take responsibility for things and organize myself and other people around that, which has been super helpful now that I'm supervising. And the communication helps with that as well. So I kind of viewed it as like, okay, this is not what I should be doing, but this is still helpful. Everything you ever do helps in some way. Like you'll years later, when you're working in animation, you'll realize like, oh, this thing that I learned back in the bookstore or when I was doing this degree that I didn't end up using, it's actually coming in handy now. Like the math and the physics, it's all useful. So none of it is ever a waste. So, and I think you can also just keep trying. There's kind of no shame in trying again. Like it gives you experience and knowledge that you didn't have the first time you tried it or the second time you tried it. So, and also because I've been in the position of hiring people sometimes, and people are worried that if they apply somewhere and get a rejection, that's it for that studio. And that's not the case at all. Like you could be perfect for the next project, or maybe for this project, so many people applied that they had to pick and choose. And for the next project, maybe only 3 people applied and you're perfect for it. And also, having looked through a lot of applications, no one's going to remember. Like I might, if I see a shot again in a reel, I might remember like, oh, I've seen this before, but I'm not going to remember like, oh yeah, that was this person who was named this. And like, I didn't like the reel 2 years ago. So this is probably garbage. Like no one remembers that. And nobody thinks like that. I need to find people and you are a person. So you might be helping me out.
That is, I think, really good advice for people, because understanding that it's project specific and not person specific. Often
Yes.
people don't realize that. So
yes, the styles vary greatly between projects and just what someone's looking for. Like for one project, I might be looking for very artistically minded people for ink and paint. And for the next one, maybe I need very technically minded people just because of the demands of the style. So you could be perfect for one and not at all suited for the other. And you don't know that unless you apply.
that's great advice. Thank you very much, Helga. And Grainne, could we come to you for the same thing? Just thinking about your challenges and your highlights, and from that, what advice you would give people?
I think definitely, just like Helga said there as well, even if it seems like everything is going against you and that you're not supposed to be in that field, like or in this field, yeah, just keep at it, because definitely it might sound like everything went well for me and that it was just stages in my career where I wasn't hearing back from jobs, or you know, I had to keep knocking on doors. Like I know that when I went to Toronto, I didn't have a job for 9 months. I just kept not being able to get hired. And I had to just, like you were saying, Helga, I just was so persistent. And I went to animation festivals and job fairs, and I was just like, just hire me, somebody hire me. So definitely you're going to get rejections. If you really want this, keep at it. And because I think when you might look at other people, you're like, oh, they're so successful, it comes naturally to them. Just don't compare yourself to other people. You know, you've got your own road, and everyone brings something to the table, I think. But I think I did a lot of that too. People around me and being like, oh my God, they're so much better than me. But yeah, don't compare yourself to anyone, and don't let that intimidate you, I guess. And then also more practically, practice drawing, and also if you can, learn programs, get a little bit of an intro into programs like Photoshop and things like that. There's so many tutorials on YouTube. And yeah, try and get an internship as soon as you can.
What I'm taking from what both of you are saying.
Did you hear that, or did my internet give?
No, we heard.
Yeah, okay, good.
What I'm taking from what both of you are saying is that a Buddhist mindset is a very useful tool for an animator. So to try and keep steady and let the winds of fortune pass over, blowing good or bad, but to keep steadily onwards and not to get too downhearted at the downtimes, because they come in every career path. And I'm sure even, you know, Tom and Ross, we could ask them and they could also tell us the stories about the challenges and the difficulties that they experienced at different times. I think at this stage, we're going to invite Alan to join us again and to start sharing some of the questions from the audience with us. I can see there's quite a few there in the Q&A already. Hey, Alan.
Hi. Thank you, guys. That was really great. Really interesting kind of take on the different aspects that you both worked on. Yes, quite a few different questions. Some of them I will group together and others are quite straightforward. I think just as a straight off, there's a one to Helga. There's a nice comment about Amy likes your background, the mural, the art mural behind you, your sources of creation, and it's something she says she does herself, and she just wanted to say that to you. But also, actually, Helga, a question came in on this point of your homeland, Iceland, and that there seems to be quite a vibrant and interesting art scene there. How would you describe it? Is Carol's question, and this scene, how would you talk about it?
Well, first of all, thank you. This isn't a mural. This is a bunch of prints that I bought from various artists at cons. So yeah, it's nice to have it up there to look at. Yes, there is. So I moved away from Iceland over a decade ago, so I haven't been super plugged in to the art scene. Yeah, there's a really a lot of visual art, a lot of music happening in Iceland. I'm not totally sure why. Maybe it's because the winters are long and dark and there's not much else to do, and like not much else to see when it's really dark, and also the kind of wild nature and the weather and everything kind of, I think, pushes you to be creative, because like, I don't know, if the ground can start shaking at any moment, you're like, okay, so what else could happen here? Oh, maybe this. There's actually a series of earthquakes in Iceland this morning.
Wow.
Yeah, quite big ones. But yeah, it's very interesting. Like, I got a little glimpse of the visual art scene when I was in the art school, the portfolio course, because that was very much aimed at getting us into the Icelandic University of Arts. So they took us to galleries and everything, and exhibitions, and we got to talk to a lot of artists, and everyone who teaches at that course is a working artist. So they'll just come in for 2 weeks and teach a course and then go off. So there's a lot of mixing there of like the actual working artists and the students, which I think is very beneficial, both for like the creative development of the students and for their just for their connections and networking. So I think that kind of keeps itself going quite nicely. Yeah, and there's also just a general spirit, I guess, in the country that like doing creative work is something good and noble. Like, people aren't like, oh, you're going to art school, ew. They might go like, how are you going to make money? But that's kind of it. They're not like, oh, that's a lower career to go for. So there isn't really a sense of that. So I guess that helps as well.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Good answer. And then kind of in a connected way, but moving it over to Grainne. Grainne, kind of questions coming for you about you've traveled a lot and are about to travel more. But how would you compare the animation in Ireland to other countries, and you know that you have maybe worked in or visited? And with these countries, I suppose, what are what are the established or up and coming countries in animation that you would be aware of, that you regard, I suppose?
Well, the first part of what I'd like to say anyway about animation in all different countries, it's really comforting to know that there's always the same kind of people. Like, you know, in Cartoon Saloon, it's very family vibe. I found that it's been very much like, I've been lucky enough to have that family vibe in a lot of other studios too. Like, it seems like animation people are very down to earth no matter where you go. So that's always, it's comforting. And I mean, I've worked in, I know that in Copenhagen, there seems to be a lot of young studios that are up and coming there, like Sun Creature and some other studios like that. I hear there's more and more studios in opening up in Copenhagen. So I think there's an exciting scene growing there for animation. And of course, in Canada, where I'd also be familiar with, I mean, there's a lot of animation, but the difference between it and Ireland is, you know, the feature films that Cartoon Saloon make are not, it doesn't seem like there's been feature films being made very often in Canada. And so I think that's a difference. I think my Canadian friends can be, they're kind of jealous that I get to work on feature films. So I think that's a difference as well to working in Ireland, working with Cartoon Saloon.
Okay, and an important question is coming from Amy, who herself has said, you know, that she would be someone who would have disability issues, and she asked the question, I think it's for all three of you in a way to consider, is how easy or not is it a case of working in animation if you have disabilities? And it's something she's concerned about in getting a dream job in this sector. And do you know of people who work with disability in the animation world?
I might answer that one just to say that there is probably much more awareness now than at any time previously about the importance of having a level playing field for everybody. So in Cartoon Saloon, we're working at the moment on our diversity and inclusion, not just a policy, but a living, breathing strategy that's from top down and bottom up. But also Animation Ireland are running a lot of training and support courses for studios on this. Section 481 funding in Ireland insists on having an EDI policy in there in order for studios to qualify for that tax relief in filmmaking. So it's actually, I guess, easier now than ever before in terms of being able to work in the studio, because studios are very mindful of it. The reasons I've listed are, so there might be legislative support that's or legislation that's insisting on it, but there's also a very real and very meaningful intent on the parts of studios, because we also recognize that films work better when there are mixed and diverse crews working on them. So yeah, nicer places to be also. So hang in there, Amy, and don't let the fear of it not being disability friendly put you off, because studios are becoming more and more accessible and friendly in every way for people coming in there.
Yeah. Grainne or Helga, do you have anything to add to that from your perspectives, or has Anne summed it up?
I don't have much to add, except maybe that you shouldn't let that hold you back from applying. You should just talk about it in an interview or after you get a job offer, and then see what accommodations can be made, because usually accommodations can be made. So don't let that hold you back at all.
Okay.
I would say the same as Helga, exactly. Don't let it hold you back.
Great, and thank you guys for that. Lily has come back with a question more going back into your specific area of work, saying that the juxtaposition of layout and color is very exciting within the movie, especially with the use of the shadows of Moll and Robin talking. And she talks about the living wolves in the cave versus the busts of deer in the Lord Protector's quarters. What techniques did you use to make these come alive, this idea of the layout and the color?
Me?
I think that's
I guess I'm the layout person. So yeah, like layout and color, the color is such a strong component of the film. Like I don't know exactly with the, where you can see the shift in color as the mood changes. And so once again, like color was very important when it came down to the mood of a particular scene. Like again, using that example of Robin fighting with her father, the colors start to change to reds and oranges, and the lines in the layout start to jitter. And so it's trying to, once again, just strengthen the fear and of this conflict between Robin and her father. And so, and then I'm trying to think of some other uses of, when the running with the wolves, that color palette that's used there is unique in the film. It's very magical colors to kind of nearly turn it into this just magical moment in the forest between the two girls and the pack of wolves. So yeah, if you watch the film, I think you can really, the use color was so important. It was the variation of color was so important in the film, and that was really down to a fantastic direction from Maria and Ross and the background team.
Yeah, I would also add to that a lot of those color shifts are really done in compositing. So I wanted to shout out the compositing department for that. Like when the colors shift within a scene, that's all them. And everything that we colored in ink and paint was all local colors. So Robin was the same color in every single scene that we did. And then compositing, they were the ones who actually like made her more blue if she was in the dark, or more red if there was fire around. So there's a lot of work that goes on in compositing after ink and paint is done.
Can you explain for us a little, Helga, what compositing is? Because a bit like ink and paint, it can be a really unfamiliar term.
Yes.
For
yes. So compositing is the department that gets the backgrounds and the animation and puts it all together. And I used to work as a compositor, and it's really where you start to see the actual, they do the final image. So, and they do color shifts on the characters, like I said. They'd add some subtle shadows, some effects like glows from fire and lights. They put in the rain sometimes, some kinds of effects and splashes, depending on if they've been done by hand or sometimes they're just done in comp. So they are the ones that do the final image. What you see on screen, that's the output of the compositing department. It's really where it all comes together.
So a lot of subtlety required in that department then visually.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of oversight both before and during, from art direction and from the directors, to kind of get it all working together. And like through the whole film, to have like a color story going through the whole film. Compositing is kind of where you can do those things. Yeah, it's a fantastic department to work in, and I can tell you from experience that it's not enough people work in compositing. So if working in animation is something you want to do, you might want to learn After Effects. You can just do that online. That's what I did, and that's how I started. So
also good advice. I know myself, just even because in the last year or so, I've been learning a lot about the animation process. I have to say these talks are fantastic for me, even as an insider. They really increase my knowledge. Thank you for that. But just in looking at the difference of images before compositing and afterwards, after compositing, there's a richness and a depth there. The shadows come in, you can see the play of light. Yeah, it's quite a dramatic difference. But also the file sizes are huge. And this I know because we're all working remotely, and
yes,
to service that is quite a challenge.
Yes, that was a big challenge when we had to go into lockdown when we were finishing up WolfWalkers, and we had to figure out how to do that on the fly. Good times.
Yeah.
Actually, kind of around this, that there is a question about technology that has come in, an anonymous question, but do you feel, it's a bit loaded question, do you feel you're limited in any way by the technology or imagination? I suppose there could be limitations around technology. I would dare say not limitations around your imagination. I don't think that exists. But but where do you fall in that spectrum?
I would say there's technology can limit you. There are certain things that some softwares do better or worse, and it can be very hard. Cartoon Saloon implies several software developers who we routinely ask to just write little scripts for us to like make the technology work for us. And that's kind of been and even I've been learning to write little scripts myself to do the same. And it's kind of I think the ethos of the studio is to make the technology work for us, not the other way around. Like the creativity should always lead the technology. So if some program isn't working, we might either just change programs or get someone to write an add-on or a plugin for it for us so that it does what we want it to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think coming up towards the end, the finale, which has been asked in every talk series, who is your favorite character in the movie? Grainne, perhaps you go first.
For me, for me, I Maeve. I think she's such a fantastic character. I think she's a lot of people's favorite characters, but I think her attitude is she's just so funny, you know, like she's really her own little woman, and her hair is amazing. She's got a pack of wolves. I mean, what more could you want?
Yes. And Helga?
Yeah, I have to agree that Maeve is a really great and fun character to watch. I also have a soft spot for Merlin, both because he's just really fun and like really expressive without he never stops being a bird, you know? He's never like a human who is bird shaped. He's always a bird. And also just on a more nerdy level, because he was actually really fun to work with in Ink and Paint, because we did so much with his fluttery wings that we could like really push the offsets. And if you go frame by frame through any of the Merlin scenes where he's fluttering, you'll see how much fun we had with that. So I really like Merlin as well for that reason.
Okay, well, it kind of with the animals that you talk about, it's a nice segue just to say to everybody listening in that next week is our last talk in the series, and it's been a phenomenal series of talks, and I suppose the main characters are the topic of conversation next Wednesday. It's the wolves themselves, and we will have Tom and Ross back again to talk with Dr. Kieran Hickey from the University College Cork about wolves in Ireland, and it's an intriguing topic about the folkloric aspect of these wild wolf packs that existed in Ireland back in the 17th and 18th centuries. And what that means, what that meant for Irish society, and of course is the basis for WolfWalkers. So I wanted to flag up the wolves for next Wednesday. So maybe on that, Anne, I'll let you kind of round up today for us.
Well, I think you've rounded up beautifully already. Just remains for me to thank both Grainne and Helga, as always, for generosity, openness, honesty, and engaging answers. And thank you everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you all in a weird sort of virtual way next week.
Yes.
Thank you, Anne and Alan, as well. And Helga.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.